Being who you are is enough. You, yourself, you don't need to do anything else but be who you are, because that's enough to elevate the sport and the thing that you want to do. You don't have to be better. You don't need to do more. Just what you're doing now is enough.
Welcome back to After the Routine. I'm your host, Rochelle Provo, and I'm here with your favorite sports performance consultant, Jeff Benson. Jeff is the owner of Mind Body Cheer. He's a best-selling author of Unblocked, The Walls Come Tumbling Down. He's a trusted leader in mindset and mental performance within the cheer industry. And he recently released a book called The Cheer Coach's Handbook that he co-authored with Dan Cotton and Danielle Johnston. With over 30 years in cheer and a background in kinesiology and counseling psychology, Jeff helps coaches understand what truly holds athletes back and how to guide them forward with practical tools. His work bridges the gap between today's athletes and the adults who lead them, translating performance science into real-world strategies that improve accountability, leadership, and confidence. He is known for his super relatable and honest approach and has worked with programs around the world to help coaches elevate culture while staying aligned with their own values and goals. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Jeff.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that sounded really nice.
It was. You've done some incredible things, and I'm really excited to talk about your journey.
Yeah.
Because I also think that it's an area that most athlete or coaches don't realize that they can actually go towards and make it a career.
That's exactly right.
Awesome. So how did you get started in the sport of cheerleading?
Oof, good question. So I would go all the way back to last century when I was in third grade. This would have been like 1980 something. I was that little boy on the sideline behind the cheerleaders while my brother played basketball, and I was like, "This is so cool! You girls are so fun! This is amazing!" Yeah, I love sports. I loved activities, but there was something about cheerleading way back in the day that I was like, I want to do that. So in Illinois, where I'm from, there was men's gymnastics at the high school. So I did that for freshman through senior year. And instead of continuing gymnastics in college, I realized this is it. I could take all of those skill sets and finally be able to bring them to the cheer mat. And attended Illinois State University, where I got to help the program grow and foster and be a competitive cheer athlete. And it was everything that I hoped it would be. That little third grade Jeff was so proud. Loved it.
I love that. Yeah.
And I'm still doing it. So clearly I love this thing.
And it's one of those things that someone else was saying, and I think actually multiple guests at this point is saying, that cheerleading is one of those sports that you always find your way back into. Like you might take like a little career off, like side shoot, and then you come back. And then you might do something else, and then you come back.
It's like a cult.
So with that, you went and then got a background in kinesiology. And why did you choose that?
I always loved movement. How the body functions, why does it do what it does? And I realized I loved teaching. So even when I would come home from school, I would take my little brother, I love volleyball as well, and I would teach him whatever we learned in volleyball. And we would play against the house, and we would create courts across our sidewalk in the front of our house, and we would play volleyball. I loved teaching my poor little brother, Teddy. I would be a math teacher, and I would teach him whatever we learned in math. And so I knew teaching was something that was important to me, but PE or physical education was always the thing that I really was mesmerized by, even though I wasn't involved in the typical male sports, football, soccer, baseball. I loved movement. And so when I went to Illinois State University, where I cheered for 4 years, I knew I wanted to get my bachelor's degree in kinesiology education. And so I did.
And then how did you kind of transition to the psychology counseling side?
That took a little bit longer. So I taught PE for a number of years in the suburbs of Chicago. And I was, as one would expect, a little bit different than a typical gym teacher, as people called it. But gym is a place or a name for a person, not a teacher. So I was a PE teacher. And for some reason, I would always come back to the culture of my class and trying to use and facilitate what was happening in the group and group dynamics and really talk about it, what was going on with kids who were maybe struggling in the class. And I would dive into going into their regular classes during my off periods. Like, let me observe this kid who's struggling to help understand and maybe be a better influence on this person when they're in my class. And so after I stopped teaching PE, I moved out to California where I worked at a competitive cheer gym for the first time. You had mentioned like we keep going back and forth in cheer. I was back in Illinois teaching PE at the middle school. I was also coaching at a different area high school.
Yeah.
But when I moved to California out here on the West Coast, a number of years later, I knew I did not want to teach PE any longer. And so it was my first experience in all-star cheer. And I did that for a number of years. And I'm not going to lie, I left because cheer parents are crazy. So this was like the early 2000s. And I was like, I can't deal with these people. They're like absolutely insane. So what would somebody do who's burned out with cheer and doesn't like this one group of people? Well, clearly they're going to go get a degree in psychology, he says ridiculously. But yeah, I went and got my master's degree in counseling psychology because I realized throughout my entire life, everything I did, that lens was something I was always either fine tuning or I was interested in learning more.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that you were saying about, going into the other classrooms, I find that as well when I'm coaching and I'm talking to parents and they're like, we're having behavioral issues outside, right? So they're having it at home, they're having it in the school. But then when they come to cheer, I don't see that at all, right? Like the cheer is their safe spot and it's the way that they can, have a moment to like be themselves. And so it's interesting because it translates everywhere, right?
It does. And cheer, uniquely, in my opinion, cheer is a unique opportunity for kids to learn those tools. And the hope is either cheer is tough, something hard in cheer, where everything else is easier. So they learn the tools in cheer to then grow, or cheer is their safe spot, but they're struggling everywhere else. And they're then able to realize, why am I thriving here? And again, then they use those tools to vice versa. I don't know what it is about our sport, but it is wildly fascinating in how, when done right, it becomes a transformative experience for athletes.
Yeah. And like you said, like it also goes to the person who is making an effort for those athletes. So like you're going into other classrooms and you are trying to see like how you can help. And there are so many coaches that want to do that, right? And they're like,
That's
how
right.
can I help these athletes?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I assume most of us are in this business not to get rich because you're in the wrong business, but to positively impact the lives of future leaders. So it makes sense that we're so invested in the building blocks necessary to help each athlete who's at a different place find those limiters, as I call them, or holes to help build that child up to become the person that we see that they're capable of being.
And then, so you did All Star, you've done gymnastics, you were a PE teacher, then you got your counseling or your master's in counseling. So then at what point did you start to transition to working with mental blocks and tumbling?
I kind of gave a teaser when I think of Jeff in 2004, 2007, who thought cheer parents were nuts. Real quick, I don't think that anymore. I now realize it's parents who love their kids so much, they just had a hard time conveying what was going on. And I was very biased. So that does help me find the thread, the needle of like, coaches, yes, parents are acting crazy. And parents, yes, coaches aren't always showing up the way they hope to. Let's come together. But let's get back to your question. Yeah, I was that coach back in the early 2000s who was like, mental blocks don't exist. You didn't lose your skill. It's not a wallet that you misplaced. I don't believe it. To recognizing through my background in psychology and better understanding the nervous system while also coaching at that same time, it was kind of a natural transition to recognize Yeah, mental blocks are like this really over evolved reaction to fear. But the reality is that's a spectrum. And I experienced not the mental block, but I experienced the performance anxiety. The longer I was in cheerleading, the more nervous I got to perform, which was wild. Because you would think, well, you should have more confidence the more you do this. Why is it the opposite? And that's really when I recognized I wanted to step out of my role as a marriage and family therapist, out of being a psychotherapist and translating all of that background education and apply it to sports performance with competitive cheerleaders. I was thinking in my head 12, 13 years ago, okay, how am I going to do this? Yeah, you remember that mechanism that caused the longer I was in cheerleading to create more anxiety in me? Ooh, the fixed mindset. Well, we're a fixed minded sport, perfection based, which causes anxiety and fear of failure. I could use that. And I know I don't have world's titles because I didn't do all star very much. There wasn't the summit back when I was coaching in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, how am I going to differentiate myself? Because cheer wants titles. I bet if I write a book, people are going to think I'm smart. And then people are going to like have me on podcasts and like give me a platform. Haha, funny on them. I'm going to write a book, but I'm really not that smart. I'm going to figure out what people want to know about. And so 13 years ago, I started writing on block. The walls come tumbling down, putting together my background in psychology, biomechanics, kinesiology, background in cheer and gymnastics. And so we have this crazy little book that people still reference. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Long answer to a very simple question. I apologize.
No, not at all. I've said this before. Rambling's totally accepted. I'm a rambler and I just like love talking to people. So I love answers. And I think that you tied it all together. And at the same time, there's so much when it comes to writing a book and being passionate enough to sit there and write like 100 pages plus of a book.
That is not for the faint of heart. You are correct.
Now, you did talk about growth mindset. So I want to talk about that. So can you quickly explain growth mindset versus fixed mindset?
I'd be happy to. So over 30 years ago, there was a psychologist, Dr. Carol Dweck, who wanted to really study what helps individuals who are seemingly average do great things, and then those seemingly gifted people who go on and seem to not fulfill their greatest potential. And so she set out over 3 decades ago trying to answer that question, and she realized the biggest differentiator was this thing, mindset. So she coined that term and defined it as the way in which an individual views their talent, ability, and intelligence. Sometimes that's really boring, so like disseminate, give me a simpler. How talented do you think you are? How capable are you at believing you can overcome hard things? And she found that there is 2 different ways in which an individual might look at a challenge. The fixed mindset looks at a challenge as a chance that they might show their fallibility or that they're not good or smart or talented. And so when using the fixed mindset, the person stops trying. They protect themselves for fear of what other people are going to view them as. Dr. Dweck would say a fixed mindset is viewing your talent, ability, and intelligence as limited or fixed, meaning you only have so much. So this other open mindset, some people call it green mindset, whatever you want to think of it, this growth mindset is the belief that your talent, ability, and intelligence can grow when using strategies, asking for help, perseverance, grit. You can grow your talent, ability, and intelligence in ways that when using your fixed mindset, you cannot. So you look at challenges as an opportunity to improve rather than as a sign of who you are.
I love that. Yeah, and like you said, it can be very difficult in a sport that is focused on trying to be perfect.
Exactly right.
So with that in mind, what are ways that parents or coaches can help their athletes have that growth mindset?
It's a really wonderful question. When I think of the point you just made, being a perfection-based sport neurologically is going to stamp inside of an athlete the need to be perfect, to make as few errors as you can, to constantly compare yourself to everyone else. We are involved in a sport that does that very thing, where a football team, a softball pitcher, a volleyball player, you're not going to have 100% anything ratio. A basketball player shooting a free throw. No basketball player has 100% free throw shots, and there's no defense. It's just you, a ball, and a hoop that's not that far away, and no one hits 100%. But a team or a stunt group that doesn't hit their stunt 100% of the time is catastrophic in cheer. And in basketball, it's like, go and get that rebound. So what can we do? The first thing is we have to acknowledge what cheerleading, a perfection-based sport, does to the brain of an athlete. If we do not accept the fact that we're the lens or the template, the blueprint of cheerleading is based on perfection, if we can't accept that, we're already a step behind. So let's accept cheerleading is a perfection-based sport that is going to create the desire for cheerleaders to compare themselves to one another and be perfect and make as few errors as possible. Second thing we can do after we accept that's what we are is be very careful with the way we praise our children. If I'm using the role or the lens of a parent, rather than posting your child doing a round-off back handspring for the first time on Facebook and saying, look at what Jenny did in just 2 hours, what you're doing, not intentionally, but what you're doing is saying, I am impressed by your talent. I'm impressed by how fast you learn something and your ability to gain skills quickly. Fixed mindset. Yeah, but I'm just so proud of my Jenny. But what are you proud of? Well, I'm proud that she loves cheerleading and she has spent 2 years improving the technique on her back walkover, and she's been doing drills for 6 months, and she asks to go in the gym to do open gyms. And I'm proud of her dedication of doing flexibility training and strength at home. If you would praise that more than the back handspring, your child is then going to start the neural networks of the growth mindset. But unintentionally, when parents praise the end result, how quick somebody gets something, the skill set they're in, the fact that they leveled up every year, you're creating more fixed mindset in an already fixed-minded sport. So it's really, after the praise, the third piece is understand what creates fixed mindset and what creates growth mindset. And start praising, that second fact, the growth mindset, the effort, the overcoming challenges, the ability to bounce back when things don't go the way you want, the extra practices, their passion, their person. All of those things will help stamp that other neuron.
Yeah, which I also think applies so much to coaches, right? When you're looking at what you're rewarding, right? And praising and not saying, I'm so glad you got this skill, but like, look at the courage you took. Look how much work you put in behind the scenes that no one else sees.
Exactly right. And so I'm going to say the most controversial thing that I normally say at this moment: hit 0 as a goal is a fixed minded goal. Hate me all you want. The intention behind it, I get. This is the thing they can control. They can't control the score the judges give them, but they can control hitting 0. Really? Can I control that stunt group over there? Can I control my flyer? No. So when we're praising perfection, hitting 0, we are only contributing more of that fixed-minded stuff. And so coaches, think about this. All the times that you're frustrated that your kids give up on a challenge, that your parents want their kids to level up every season, you're promoting that with a hit 0 philosophy.
I love it. Yeah. And I think also there are other things that you can highlight, right? Like one of the ones we said last year was, I want you to come off the floor and have had the most fun you've had all season, right? Like where in those moments, in those routines, can you be like, yeah, okay, like this is fun, this is exciting, and taking it back to why you actually joined the sport.
That reminder, and I love that you brought that up, because at the end of the day, the way in which we can use cheerleading to help elevate our athletes' confidence, well-being, tools for life is, rather than just thinking of like the end result, hitting 0, coming off the floor, having fun, feeling proud of yourself. All of those are like the not white flag, the checkered flag at the end of a car race, rather than focusing on the checkered flag, which is good. We want outcome goals. Like, let's not lie. But a lot of us want to win. But what are the steps you're going to take to get there? And are you holding yourself and your teammates accountable? So let's take your excellent growth minded idea. I want you to have fun. Remember why you started this. What is fun? How can you have fun? What creates this sense of pride? How do you communicate with your teammates in order to keep it fun? When something's not fun, what do? Give up? So all of those things that you actually do control, when you check all those boxes, that is what creates fun, pride, confidence. So again, hitting zero is not in itself something I don't ever want you to talk about. Because typically, if you want to win, hitting zero is a pretty important goal. But it is, how do you practice? What do you do when you don't hit zero? When your stunt is bobbling, how do you respond? What do you do when your stunt isn't hitting? How do you respond? When your flyer is scared, how do you communicate with her? And when you can set up all of these benchmarks or process-based goals, which is growth-minded, it helps you influence, not create. It helps you influence hitting zero. It helps you influence being proud of yourself. It helps you influence having fun.
Yeah. The other one I always think of too is when we talk about hitting zero, and there are so many days where like an athlete shows up to competition sick, and like that's nothing you can control. Like, they physically are weaker, they mentally are having a harder time following up and going through it, and being able to say, like, do the things that we've set, right? And like, okay, we're going to recover faster if things happen this time. And that's a big one for my team. I know for last year was they're a little bit older, and so they were trying to kind of push it, and they're like, okay, well, if we come down, we're missing all these things. It's like, okay, you're going to miss one part, but like, how fast can we get back up? Do we talk to each other as a team, right? And then who is making sure that the team is moving forward together, right? Who's going to step up and be the leader? And I think that's one thing that I love about cheerleading is we're talking about all these emotional regulation things, which are so important as you become an adult, and all of the life skills that we learn in cheerleading. It's such a unique sport, like you said. And I always like to think of it, it's like 5 sports in one, which allows us to be able to have some really cool experiences. And we talk about everyone having an important role on the team. And sometimes having those people be those leaders is the most important. I would say, I personally think it's the most important over who has the most skills, because that's really going to change the culture of the team.
That's right. There's a momentum factor in how you show up, or I often call it the domino effect, that your round off back handspring doesn't have. But you can absolutely control the way in which you bounce back, the way in which you show up for your teammates, the way you communicate. When you're sick, what do? How quickly can you recover? I love that. Real quick, I don't know if you recognize, like, you checked 3 boxes in that one example of process-based focused things that will help better influence the overall goal. And it really is. Those are the building blocks of being a champion-minded athlete on and off the cheer field.
Yeah, which is so important to build, because one day you're not going to have one more day on the mats, which is a hard day in itself, but
it is.
Okay, so then we talk about all of these positive things that come from culture. So what can happen when there's a negative culture on a team or within a gym?
Yeah, I like that. I'm wondering if you could help me in giving me either an example, or when you say negative culture or toxic, can you give me like specifics, what you're envisioning to help me better navigate?
Let's see. I would say a really quick example that most coaches may find is that an athlete maybe making negative comments at a practice, or we're having, a parent make negative comments. And so how do we make sure that we're moving forward with the best interest of the team and creating a culture where everyone has that role and has an important part?
It's a great question and so hard to answer because in my brain, I'm like, how far back do you want me to go? Another way to look at it is like, how close to the middle of the onion do you want me to get? Let's start super fast, really tangible. That's not what we do here. That's not what we do here. We don't break people down to build ourselves up. We don't do that here. I say that often when I do staff trainings, parent trainings. What we're trying to do is create this emotional contagion in a positive way, culture-wise. Like even in the parent room, my hope is we get one of those leader-like parents to look at another parent who may be talking about another child and just look. We don't do that here. And that tells all the new parents, there's no shame in it. It's this is what is acceptable, this is what's not acceptable. Because your culture is not what is done. It's not the highest behavior. It's not the best parent. It is the lowest behavior that is accepted and not addressed. That's your culture.
That is like, it's simple, but it sets that standard, right? And it's like, that's one line, but the difference between not saying it and saying it allows a lot of things to start to fester. Whereas like if you nip it in the butt, we don't do that here. It also like takes a step back, like, okay, maybe they weren't realizing that that's what they were doing, and being able to say like, nope, we don't do that here. Okay, now I know for going forward.
So if you want the true, like, how do we make significant impact on our culture, is for me, in my opinion, as a sports performance consultant, you have to know what your gym values. So when I do work specifically with gym owners, especially, we set core values. And I am not talking gym owners and coaches about the mission statement in your tryout packet and your core values on your tryout packet that right now I ask you what they are. And you go, yeah, just give me a second. We did these like 8 years ago. I just need to. Those are not core values. They are not who you are. You're not living them. They're just really pretty words. So high five, you did some work. It's better than what most people are doing. But if you want to actually have a positive, what I would call a champion-minded culture, you have to know what your core values are that are going to get you to your mission statement, your X marks the spot. And your coaches must know what these values are. Your parents must know what they are. Your kids, yes, your athletes must know what they are. And they must be able to define them. And once you can do that work, which is not easy, don't get me wrong, but it is critical if you truly want to make your X marks the spot obvious. So rather than what I would call like plugging the holes in the boat, the fun, this isn't, we don't do this here. And then all your other funds, it's a lot easier when you're like core values. One of our core values is communication. It's really easy to talk to a kid who might be saying something negative about another athlete and go, what are our core values? Blah, 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 blah. What core value are you holding below the line? I'm not upholding communication. How so? I was talking bad about Susie, but she da 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 da. What is our other core value? Accountability. When you are saying, but Susie, are you holding above the line or below the line standard for our value of, or our core value of accountability below the line?
I like the idea of having them define it, but then being able to give the example, like you said, above or below the line. Like actually give me it so that I know you understand it.
Right, the application.
What are some ways that coaches can help build healthy culture, especially being in the beginning of the season right now?
Oh my gosh, this is the best time to build your culture. Because my background is in pedagogy or teaching, I think of the most important time to set the tone of your classroom is right from the start. If I, as a teacher, right from the start, say these are what are acceptable behaviors and unacceptable behaviors, it's easier as the year goes on to kind of pull back if they don't need the level of oversight because the class is showing they have the ability to be autonomous and they are showing proper communication. It's a lot easier for me to pull back. Versus as a teacher, I have a much more go with the flow environment. Then all of a sudden I realize third hour is just a chaotic mess. It's going to take me so long, if not the entire year, to get them back on track. So coaches, it's the same exact thing. Setting the stage right now for what your athletes want to accomplish, creating what the game plan is for what your kids want to accomplish, and then all you do is shine a mirror up to these behaviors. You want to get a bid to summit. You want to get the golden buzzer. You want to hit 0. These are great. What are the behaviors necessary? Then what are the behaviors that are going to be below the line? What are we going to do to address those behaviors? And now all I have to do for the next 9 months is ask questions. Is that above or below? It's right there, we wrote. But what most coaches do, my gosh, it's June, almost July. We have choreography in August. We need to do our skills. I get it, and you're going to have a really rough season. So my email is mindbodycheer@gmail.com. And when your team isn't hitting in November and your kids are beside themselves because they can hit it in practice but not at competition, when you're beside yourself because your kids have terrible attendance or they're so upset they're not winning, email me. But I'm going to say the same thing I'm saying right now. It starts in June. Yeah. And if you don't make time for it now, you're going to have to make time for it later. And it's going to be more time.
And it's going to be at a time when you're wanting to focus on other things, right? Like on getting those reps, perfecting technique, all of those things, getting mentally prepared for competition.
And so everybody, typically, the average coach is, I just don't have time for that stuff, Jeff. Okay. And just like you said, that means you're going to be taking those extra reps later and you're going to have to be doing triage and having parent meetings, individual athlete meetings. You're going to have to be re-choreographing because that kid quit because you didn't address the situation in the beginning, and then that girl quit, and then this girl is sick. And if you just set the standard in June with the template I just gave you, you wouldn't have these problems in November. I'm just saying.
So what are some examples of the standards that coaches can set?
Yeah, so if we go back to, this is like the middle core of the onion. In the early 2000s, we were still in a very leader-centric culture. I am your coach. I want this from the team. This is what I think you're capable of. So this is what I'm going to drag you to do. We don't live in that culture anymore. Real quick. So anybody who's trying to still do it the way you did in the early 2000s, you need to evolve. You don't have to, but understand you will expire. So instead, let your kids set the goal that they want. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to be able to coach a team that's like, I want fun and friendships and lots of memories. We're not going to be a good fit. I, as Jeff Benson, when I am your coach, I value communication, 100% effort, accountability, and excellence. So that's what we're going to do here. Bottom line standard. What goals do you want to set? We want this and this and this. That's amazing. And how are we going to get there? It's all the stuff we talked about. So we're going to get there by having 90% attendance at all of our practices or more and 100% attendance the last 2 weeks before competition. Great. I love that. What's going to happen if you have a teammate that has a funeral and can't attend that practice? I don't know. That's really hard. It's going to happen. What are we going to do? We can still love you, but we are going to need someone to play that role. Okay, so let's all accept if for some reason you're not able to commit to the last 2 weeks of practice before a competition, then understand that somebody will come in to that role to help the team find success. Do we all agree? That's our standard. Yes, because at the end of the day, when we can come to the parents, because we need to communicate with them what the goals are, what the values of the team are, what the standards of the team are that their kids signed up for, it's a lot easier than when you have my kid has a school concert on Wednesday, the 13th. You realize that's our last practice before competition. I do, but the school just released it. And I completely understand. And it's got to be really hard to like make that choice. But this team decided when that situation happens, this is what we're going to do. And if you have started your practices in June, being a person of your word without emotion, but just objectively, this is the frame, you're going to get a lot less pushback. And then when that mom gets really mad and wants to complain to the other moms that Jeff is a terrible, heartless person, that mom goes, that's not what we do here. I get that's really hard, but accountability is one of the values of this team. And Jeff is making sure that everyone is held accountable to the things your kid wants. If your child is not at practice, that whole stunt group doesn't get a rep at all. How do you think that stunt group feels going in? How do you think your child is going to feel knowing that their stunt group didn't see them to practice before? They're going to feel resentful. You don't want your kid to feel like she's the problem, do you? Well, no. Allow someone to take that spot so the team can move forward. And now there's no like punishment. Now your child comes back in. The team is feeling great. That child should be proud of all the things she's done with that stunt group, because that stunt group succeeded because your child was a huge asset, got in all of those reps before. But that team needed to feel confident heading into the weekend. And the best way to feel confident was bringing in someone who could do that role while your child was fulfilling her other obligations, which I fully support. But our team moves on with or without you.
Yeah, I love that so much. I feel like I could just listen to you talk forever because it's just so great. Now, with that being said, you said we live in a different world, and totally agree. I think especially with the introduction of social media has had a massive influence on athletes. Right. And so how can parents and coaches help navigate all the kind of criticism and comparison and pressure that comes? Because I know I've had athletes where like they're getting close to competition and they're looking at all those team reveals where it's like this person's going to get first and this person's going to get fourth and all these things. And then they're like, well, they said we're going to get like fifth. Like, what do we do about that? So how are ways that they can help them navigate it?
I really appreciate you finding space talking about that because it's a real problem, but it's also a symptom of another. Let me explain. We talked about how cheerleading is a fixed-minded sport. Often when I do parent meetings, I kind of dramatize, but the reality is you put your child in a sport that's only going to create more perfectionism and comparison. But this is the competitive advantage of cheerleading when you put your child in a gym that also supports growth mindset. Your coaches are teaching your athletes how to be growth-minded in a fixed-minded world. So let's take comparison, which is fixed-minded. Comparison is a natural human function. If we go all the way back to our ancestors in our tribes, we compared ourselves to other people in order to keep ourselves safe. You're not going to biologically change that wiring. So one of the best tools that I would suggest using, and we talked about it earlier, is accept. Not don't compare yourself to other people, because they're gonna do it. It is comparing makes sense. It makes sense that you get on social media and you want to see where you rank in the opinions of others. How does it make you feel when you do that? Well, it feels like garbage. Do you get to control what everybody is saying about you on social media? You're going to get some kids who are wise and are like, yeah, if we hit 0 and we have more difficulty, we're going to start controlling that they think we're first. But at the end of the day, do you really control them, or are you talking about influence? Well, I guess I'm talking about influence. So if you don't actually control it, but you're letting their opinions impact you, what are different behaviors you can choose that might influence you less in a negative way? I can stop looking at my social media XYZ time before competition. I can stop following those individuals. I can put them on snooze for a period of time if I recognize that this is impacting me negatively. Great. What are you going to do if you're the one who's doing it, but you hear your teammate, who you don't actually control her feed, talking about it? We can right now set the culture. We don't do that here. So you can, I understand that you want to see where we rank, but we chose to not do that here. put your phone away.
Mm-hmm.
So accepting that this is what is reality and then finding the steps forward. I don't know if anyone's realizing it's the same template for everything. What is our goal? What are your steps? What are your limiters? How do you fix it? Goal. Oh, here's our limiter. Social media. What are the steps? How do you control it? How do you fix it?
The steps are the same regardless if you're a coach, a parent, or an athlete, because athletes also have the ability to follow that.
They do. And sometimes I think we jump in as adults and we try to manage. You put your phones down, do this. Real quick, adolescents from 10 to 25, they don't like being told what to do because during this time of adolescence, while the prefrontal cortex is like extra developing, they want two things. They want status, they want respect. They're checking social media because they want to see the status of their team. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to. And so you're like, get off your phones. They also want respect. So you doing that is doing the antithesis. You're like in dangerous territory. They're going to shut you out. So understand, I get empathy. I get why you want to see where you rank. But do you want other people's opinion, who don't actually give you a score, to influence what you are on the mat? And then the point I'm trying to make is allowing the kids to make a choice and you just shine a mirror after maybe they make a bad choice. Not an I told you so, but so how was that to check your phones just before you took the warm-up mat?
Yeah.
How did that feel? That was a really bad choice. Why? Because I recognized not only did I read what they said, then I watched the team in the warm-up room. And then when somebody made a mistake, I couldn't bounce back. Let's stamp that. Anyone else have that impact? And then what happened next? I think you were talking about with your team, how quickly do we bounce back? So what happened next? Well, then we were backstage and we were quiet and we didn't talk to each other. And what happened on stage? So they start to see that snowball effect. Again, that is status and respect, which will help those adolescents better show up next time. Where if we tell them what to do, they're less likely to do it. And so we just find this really bad cycle that we as adults get really frustrated by.
Yeah, I like how you say that, especially mentioning like the backstage, because I know that's one place that you can very quickly start to compare yourselves, right? So I know with my teams, I make them cheer on their competitors. So like when we're in the hold in that, like they're watching the routines, they're like, yeah, like you hit that, like good job, and like cheering them on when they're in their dance to create that mindset like, yes, you are competitors on the mat, but off the mats, you're still athletes, like you're peers and you're learning and growing. And like the reality is maybe one day you're going to be on the same team together.
Yeah.
And the way that you treat them is going to make a difference when you get to that moment. Or you're going to work with them at a job. And that's a whole other side of it.
I really love that as a practice, or we talked earlier about, that's a standard. Your team knows that's a standard when they're coached by you, giving them the ability to like, why would we want to cheer? Like, isn't that weird? Like we're cheering them on. Why would we do that? Well, let's flip the script. Do you want your competitors hoping and praying you fall, or are you wanting your competitors hope that you feel proud of the product you put on the floor? Well, I would want them to like, hope I do the best I can, and then leave it up to the judges. So what's integrity? Who you are when no one's watching. Do you want for others what you want for yourself? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Allowing athletes to walk into that and make that choice themselves is very powerful. Yeah, you're doing a great job, by the way. High five.
Thank you. Yeah, I always say, I'm like, I would rather win first place any day on the fact that every team had no falls, no deductions, no anything. And it came down to who had the best routine that day, because that might be different to next weekend or a month from now.
Could be. Yep.
But it comes to what was the best thing that you did. And then also what team had the most fun, because when you have fun, your performance gets better.
And if you have fun, you don't have to win. Yeah, like the best I ever did in college was third place. We did third place at UCA, and I shared this on social media. I don't know if you ever saw it, but like We were the like happiest third place team in the world because we did it together. It was like the whole journey was so monumental. There was a very strong pull on culture and togetherness. We didn't have to win in order for all of the process up to it to be worth it. It was worth it every step of the way.
Yeah.
That's the legacy I want to leave every team I work with, is how to be able to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And then recently you decided to co-author and release another book. So if anyone hasn't heard, it is called The Cheer Coach's Handbook, and it was co-authored with Dan Cotton and Danielle Johnston, who are absolutely wonderful.
They are.
So how did that idea come up, and you being involved in the process?
So I don't know if they're okay with this, but sorry, Danielle. I'm just gonna I'm very transparent. This is for better or for worse. I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago. I came back from the Next Gen conference with a bunch of other phenomenal speakers. Jason Larkins, who else? Callie from Top Gun. Just really, really great people. And Danielle was like, hey, we were thinking every person can write a chapter. And then we have this book in full Jeff fashion. Okay, what's my due date? How many pages? What's my word count? Da, 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 da. Sent it to Danielle, and I was like, okay, so like let me know. Nothing. So you're the only one who did it. I'm not even joking. It was probably 3 months ago. I was thinking in my brain, I have this like 30-page, 20-page chapter. I should like start giving this away for free because it's just been sitting on my hard drive. I'm not even kidding. A week later, Danielle's like, hey, I think we're going to finally do something with that chapter. Are you okay if we use it? It was like, I was just thinking about that chapter. How crazy. Yeah, totally. Let's do it. So it's probably not as fun of a story as most people would want, but yeah, that's what happened.
No, I think it is like patience is an important skill, right? And like having connections with people, and like it may not happen right now, but like maybe 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, like being able to create those conversations and create those relationships is so important.
Yes. You had mentioned, I don't think we were recording yet, but you were talking about just in general, kind of your mission with this podcast. Like, I want people to see all that you can do in cheer. It is not just coaching. There's so many opportunities. And if I could go back and teach anybody anything, everything is an opportunity. Use that growth mindset. Real quick, growth mindset is not positivity. It's not this toxic, everything is sunshine and rainbows. Growth mindset is everything is an opportunity. And sure, there was a part of me that when the original book idea did not come to fruition, there was a little like disappointment because I did this hard work and I spent a lot of time. But the reality was, even that process of writing that chapter helped me to help my thinking and my ability to communicate something in a more condensed fashion. As you mentioned, you love when people just go off on tangents. I do that by nature, and I really am trying to be more concise. Writing that chapter helped me be able to be more concise with, it's literally what we're talking about. Culture. So if you liked what I was talking about in terms of culture and like, how do we set it from the start? My chapter is literally about that. Okay. I digress. So the idea is when we use that growth mindset and everything is an opportunity, it may not be right now. It might just be a seed. Chances are it's going to grow into something. But if you are allowing yourself to be hijacked by the fixed mindset, my chapter didn't get used, that was a waste of my time, I can't believe no one else did it, I'm the only one, chances are that seed does not grow. And next time when someone's like, hey, do you want to do this project? You're going to look at it with a negative lens of like, well, I don't know if I really want to do that because I don't want to put in all this work. If you're not, opportunities, everyone. Look for how it will help you, your goals, your values, help the industry. It does not always have to be self-serving.
Yeah, I know my coaching philosophy is always, if I can help one athlete. So if it's in a session, if it's one team, if it's in a season, if I can make a difference on one athlete, then I kind of like check marked the thing that makes me want to coach. right? And I know in your book, you talk about creating your own coaching philosophy and going back to it when things get tough or things aren't going the way that you think it should be. So can you talk more about like what that coaching philosophy is and how coaches can develop it?
It's so good. So we're getting into the nitty gritty of that chapter, and I like that you're bringing that up because when we know what our X marks the spot is, I've talked about this before, but in this conversation, this specific question, your coaching philosophy is like the root of why you're doing what you're doing. In the chapter, I talk about like how to create your coaching philosophy, but once you have that as your X marks the spot, creating your then core coaching values, that gives you the roadmap, or you can think of it as like your compass. When I follow my core values, I get closer to this coaching philosophy, where when I find myself going in the opposite direction, I like examples. If my core coaching philosophy is to help elevate cheerleaders to being successful on and off the mat through embracing challenges and setbacks, and one of my core values is growth mindset, and a kid makes a mistake and I get pissed off and I flip my lid and maybe I get a little cutting, I am incongruent or showing dissonance with my coaching philosophy, where if I would just look like, it's really hard to remember that, but I could just look at like, are you being growth minded or fixed minded? Oh, I'm below the line growth minded. I'm being very fixed minded. I'm telling a story in my head that this one mistake means that this kid doesn't care, and I'm responding with this story in my head. That's not growth minded at all. Okay, I apologize, Susie. I flipped my lid. I told myself the story that you're not correcting this mistake and you just keep making it on purpose over and over again. Can you help me understand what I can do to better help support you in locking your leg? Well, I just don't understand what it feels like. Wow, high five. Thank you. Okay. Wow. Time for me to roll it back. Let's go do some VMO exercises, some glute activation, some quad exercise activation, ladder step it, ladder step it. That is what I'm at. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And now the athlete is starting to hit it at a higher percentage because I was able to, instead of going like macro, oh my gosh, I want to impact growth minded or fixed. That was fixed. Why? Story in my head negative. Ask her questions. Now I realize not only when I flip my lid, I don't have to be growth minded all the time, but I was fixed. What do? Well, I communicate. I made a mistake because I value accountability, and then we repair, then we fix, and look, now I'm back on track to my coaching philosophy. My X marks the spot. Did that make any sense, or was that just a tangent?
100% it did.
Okay.
And I think, I was just thinking while you're talking that it could also very easily apply in a parent situation and also in an athlete situation. Like, why am I an athlete?
Right.
Why is my kid in this sport? And go back to that, right? And like, there are going to be times when it's tough. Like, your kid is frustrated and they're getting in the car and like everything is not working. And then on the other side, like as an athlete, you're like, oh, I'm getting frustrated with a teammate, or we didn't do as well as I had hoped. Like, being able to go back and take that step and go, okay, why am I here, right?
What am I hoping to get from this? What do I hope my kid gets from this? One of the things that has now helped me transition from a previous parent hater to a cheer parent lover is being able to have that conversation. I believe all parents want three things for their kid: happy, successful in life, and be good people. That, I think, is almost every parent's X marks the spot. But when you go to these parent Facebook groups, cheer is a business, leave and go wherever you want, it's all transactionary, I'm looking for my kid to win. What do you really want? Do you really want your kid to win, or do you want what you think winning is going to give your child? You want this 99% of the time. You think winning is going to be confidence. That's not actually true confidence. That's fixed-minded confidence. True confidence is when I don't get what I want, I still believe I can use tools to learn from that in order to get what I want. Growth-minded confidence, which is happy, successful in life, and be good people.
Yeah. And I love that you touch on that be good people, because I just did a podcast and released it that was talking about the top 10 tips for CITs and junior coaches and those who are starting out being coaches, right? Like, how can you approach being a coach and creating a coaching career that you love. And one of them was, don't forget to get to know the human, not the athlete.
That's right. Yeah. You gotta remember, full child development. If you only see the person as like the pawn on your chessboard, that person's gonna feel it. You have a real human with a heart and a brain and a mind and a soul in front of you. Treat them as such, because I know you're not going to want anyone else to treat you like a pawn.
Yeah. And also, like you said at the beginning, I think it was that, like, you didn't get in this to make a ton of money. You got in it because you love the sport and you love being connected to it, right? And
That's
you
exactly
have to
right.
like working with athletes to actually stay in it. Like, you can start it because you like the sport, but you have to stay in it and like them. And like going back to that fact.
That's such a good point. Because if you are in this just to win for the ego feed, which I get, don't get me wrong, because I'm competitive, the reality is you're going to burn yourself out. Because at the end of the day, you don't actually control what your kids do on a cheer floor. But you can control your actions and behaviors that better influence the type of people that you are helping influence. My gosh, I've loved this conversation so much. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So we'll transition to the last little bit of it, which is just that if you weren't doing your current role or all the other roles that you've done, what other role in cheerleading or youth sports would you want to do?
Own a gym.
Okay.
Yeah, but no one think that that's what's going to happen. That's not what this is. I love my role and this is what I'm going to do. But yeah, if I had to stay in youth sports but change what I do in it, I'd want to own a gym.
Why would you choose that as an area?
I would love to, because what I want to do right now, my coaching philosophy is I want to help as many people as I can. But if I could create an environment to help show people with like, this is my philosophy, what I do, this is my culture, and use that as a litmus to, hey, you can do all of this. Look at what I'm doing over here. That would be another way to be able to do the same thing in order to help as many people as I can to elevate this sport.
I love that so much.
Thanks.
Okay, and then our final question is, if you think back to Jeff, who is in, college and is going in cheer and helping build this amazing team, what do you wish that someone would have told you about all the things that you would have experienced in your career up to today?
Being who you are, I just posted about this, being who you are is enough. You, yourself, you don't need to do anything else but be who you are, because that's enough to elevate the sport and the thing that you want to do. You don't have to be better. You don't need to do more. Just what you're doing now is enough. I really wish, I don't know if that kid or young adult would have listened to it, but that would have been nice to have heard.
Yeah. And I also think too that in a world where there's a lot of surface level conversations, being yourself and who you are and staying true to that just makes such a difference on your life and the way that you experience the world, but also on the ones that are around you. And like creating an environment where people see, and like specifically with coaches, athletes seeing someone be themselves and be comfortable in who they are.
Right. It's a great model.
Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Yeah, I again appreciate the space and the invitation.
Perfect. Well, make sure to tune back in 2 weeks for our next episode when we answer the question, what happens after the routine ends?